organization that's 2 people that isn't used to getting things for free. I saw this so many times back then in the pre-influencer era, that you would have a small outlet that, like, the PR person would be able to play that leverage game. And I've heard about a few examples of this happening where it'd be like, okay, well, we sent you this game. It sure would be a shame if we couldn't send you games anymore. Or, hey, you know, we sent this GPU and we hope you really like it. You know, we didn't send out a lot of them. And it's, you know, we'd love to continue working with you in the future. And so, like, those smaller publications were way more in the line of fire for that type of shit, even if they didn't have the clout. And so it was never about advertising. It was never about ad dollars per se. It was a straight up, like, we send you games, you are only able to matter in this space because of companies that are sending you games early, because otherwise you would go out and buy them, and you are not wealthy enough as a publication to go out and buy them all. So you are completely reliant on this relationship, and thus the other end of that relationship is in a position to apply pressure. And even then, I didn't really go about that happening all that often. Bit. Isolated situations.
That's
like
okay.
Smaller publications getting pressure. Now extrapolate that to today. Everyone likes to say, oh, there's no pressure from above because now it's just an individual shooting you straight, buddy, giving it to you raw on YouTube.
Yeah, give it to me raw.
Those people are dealing directly with influencer managers and teams of people on the other ends of this that work at all these companies. They have no protection, no one in the middle. Some of them will have an agent or something like that in the middle, but, you know, like, by and large, if they're out there doing sponsored streams,
all right. Let's dig out the directions here.
Yeah, well, you know, hey, we're not going to tell you what to, and I think it's inherent to the thing. They don't even have to say this, right? But I think there is an aspect to this of, like, if you're going to do a sponsored stream, and they always say, like, you can give your honest opinion. Like, yeah, you can. What if you fucking hate that game? Are they going to come back to you with more games? Is that agency that represents those publishers, are they going to go like, we had a great time working with this person. They shit all over this game. But we said it was okay that they did it, so whatever. Let's sign them up for 5 more. You know, unless you are at a size, either on YouTube or on Twitch or whatever, that you can afford to do that and that you can get away with it. You're big enough that they have to come to you.
That's me. I'm on the tube.
Audience that will listen to, you know, they're like, well, we got to try it again because this guy speaks to this genre of fan, and, you know,
so
we need to do it.
It's one of the fucking top of block
and that's not to say that all these people are on the take.
covers that I fucking walked out with.
That pressure can be applied.
That was going in the trash.
But, like, dude,
it's fucking perfect. Like, you got just this much space, and, like, if I drop a piece, oh no, it falls into the thing. It works.
Reviewers don't fucking make enough fucking money to be involved in any conversation remotely associated with that. It's just so fucking not fucking.
I've had it for months. I didn't know what I was gonna do with it, and then I just started
so
fucking.
Try to fucking write this thing about it was different.
Oh, this is just a piece of scrap leather. I don't even know where this came from. It's all. It's fucking like yellow.
Idea what you're talking about.
I've had this for years. I think this was. I think this got thrown out in like one of the old.
Overestimate the power that any individual reviewer has in any of these situations.
Fuck, what is it? The suede boxes that got thrown out years ago.
I was writing reviews that over 1 million people would see the day of release, 24 hours, over 1 million. You know, like which for a text article was fucking crazy then. It kind of crazy now.
We got KJ.
And I never fucking gave a shit. You'd hear about some stuff after the fact. Occasionally. You're like, oh, this company pulled their ad. Or, you know, hey, there'd be some relationship damage, right? Because we did previews also.
So I'm going to need to get into this.
And so a company, you just call them Rockstar, for example. Might be like, oh, you ran this thing. We don't think you respected the game enough. And now we're going to give all the exclusives for our next game to IGN.
I know.
And you have to be willing to look at that and go like, all right, yeah, that's
oh, boy, I still got to...
You'll be back.
I had two of the lasered Frank Frazetta ones.
Something not entirely nice about
I left one in my locker when I left. I kept the other one that I had because it's the fucking red Vampirella fucking print.
But back then, the very idea. Rockstar.
So hold on, I'll show you that.
We put up a video of.
I've been using it to hold my fucking Mr. Freeze models for the Batman's Minis game, just to transport them.
We put up a video of like the game fading out to load and then fading back up to gameplay because that was a relevant thing in the review. They were so fucking pissed. They were so fucking pissed. I think the video did eventually get pulled down. Because the point was made, right? And the review still said what it said. Like, the review didn't get changed.
And that was
like something where,
literally sitting in my locker for, like, 5 years, 4 or 5 years. I never got around to doing it, like, actually making a fucking tray out of it. But that's okay.
But they were always, you know, it was like, you would hear stories about the Housers sending, one of the Housers, I assume Sam, I don't actually know, could have been Dan. Sending like 72-point emails to the people on the PR team. It would be like a link to a review with a like, even just like a score that was like already pretty high, and then in like 72 font, just like fix this.
Nice. Yeah, I got this one, and then I had I forget what it's called.
That's the craziest shit.
I want to. My brain is saying Death Dealer, but I don't think that's right. It was the one with the dude on the fucking.
Just stupid stuff.
I think it was the one with the dude on the horse with like the axe on like a battlefield with like a bunch of skulls and shit everywhere and like dead bodies.
In those situations, because they could be, they could afford to be difficult to deal with, right? They just still send the game unless you were, unless you were like way being fucking crazy, like whatever. We still got the game.
Yeah, let's get all these bags open.
There were definitely cases where they would try to position it, and it always seemed like bullshit. Oh, I don't know, they said we couldn't send this to you, but I'm going to give them a anyway. We'll send you. You just have to fucking
ready for action.
Not have friends who work on video games, and that's not the case for me anymore. I do have friends who work on video games, and I don't run a lot of reviews anymore. But for a lot of years, that was the gig, right? When I was only doing reviews and not really doing previews, and occasionally go to an event, occasionally do an interview, and you meet people here and there, but like, I just didn't really, and there were situations where I had people that I thought that like, oh, we're like friendly, like I've known this guy for a long time, and then you have an insane phone call with that person, and you're like, they thought that they were going to be able to like leverage this relationship for something down the line, and now they're trying to cash in some kind of weird shit.
But yeah,
I need to not talk to this person.
We out here, we building models. I just finished one.
It happened multiple times to me over the years. It's like you just eventually get to the point where you're just
Saturday.
Fuck this, man.
Of the ZOIDS Shadow Fox. Actually,
I'm in a very different space now, and I do a lot of different things and have for a very long time.
Here.
I don't just do reviews. And so it is a very different thing,
Finished that up on Saturday. It came with a bunch of like Tampo, like military, all the classic Zoid like stickers and stuff. But I chose not to do those because those are a pain in the ass.
That's the thing that like especially in this day and age, more so now than then, like it's suicide.
Yeah, hey, if something
for any person,
if something came up for YouTube, hell yeah,
or whatever, it would be.
I'd be down.
It's not like
unemployment sucks.
like materially harmful to their business to apply that level of pressure, because it is so intensely easy to record phone calls and post screenshots of emails and all this other stuff. Like, if you're out there trying to be a fucking journalist and you're receiving that pressure, fucking post it. Post it. Blow them up. They deserve it if they're trying to pull that shit with you. Blow them up. If it's really happening. If it's really happening out there. Prove it. Should be easy. So like all of these sorts of like fucking videos and everything else that are just like, and everyone's got some weird fucking act grind, and everyone's trying to like, some game journalism. Go fuck yourself. Like these people have no fucking idea what they're talking about. The people who read a bunch of websites when they were growing up, and now they think they're like, I didn't used to be a certain way, and now I know that they're like, they were always on the take then, and now they're just like, no, fuck off. Fuck off. So many people out there who are making like their fucking YouTube essays about this subject with like zero expertise on the matter. I've had people come to me and try to get me to like appear in their stuff, like, we want to interview you about this, and you go and look at like the sort of stuff they do, and you're like, no fucking thanks.
What the fuck?
Just like, yeah, like these people have no fucking clue what they're talking about.
C.
And I don't even know what this video is. Like, so I would just say, fucking watch better videos. But don't fucking waste your time on this bullshit.
D. Where the fuck? Don't tell me after all this time I've had this doesn't have... I'm missing a sprue. That would fucking suck. Wait, is it this little thing? It's this little thing. God damn it.
Tariff gets slapped on before the Switch 2 launches. Is the price point that important, or will people buy anything Nintendo at any cost? It's a good question. I think that it's not just Nintendo. This is something that would impact everyone, right? Like you know, the launch of the Switch 2 would certainly be impacted by higher prices, but so would everything else. Everything else. So, Matt Piscatella, who works at Circana, the former NPD, was on Blue Sky this morning talking a little bit about this, because a lot of physical disc
and so the first cut has been made.
Mexico.
Let's go.
And so there's talk that there may be a 25% tariff on goods out of Mexico as of February 1st. And so what does that mean for game prices?
Sand down those
and
bits.
how does that impact the price of games? And he kind of goes on to say, I'll just quote him here directly. He says, with 25% tariffs on imports from Mexico on the way, I can see a sharp downtick in the number of disc-based games that get released physically in the U.S., as much of that production infrastructure is in Mexico. I think there's a lot in Austria also, so there's always a possibility that gets moved if that stuff is set up. But it's not easy to just like, oh, we're going to do this in the U.S. now. Like, you know, you don't just like, oh, we're just going to open a factory tomorrow. And the idea behind all of these tariffs conceptually is so fucking broken, and the precedent for it is so fucking bad. It's like there's a lot of dumb shit that's gonna happen. This is just on a pure like, oh, you forget, you know, there's stuff that's worse, but like this is just maybe the dumbest fucking thing. The dumbest. No, that's not true. It's not. No, it's not even close to this fucking dumb. Anyway, I'm not going to run down the list of the dumber shit than the tariffs, but the tariffs is a pretty fucking terrible fucking idea. But Piscatella says, if they do get made, I expect higher prices, both physical and digital. If this were to happen, I would anticipate digital MSRPs to increase to remain at price parity with physical, but who knows? In any case, none of this is good for the physical video game market. Yeah, so like it's easy to look at it and go like, well, I buy my games digitally anyway, who cares? But the knock-on effect of that is like they're going to go, well, I mean, it's twofold, right? It's one, we have retail partners that we don't want to have.
I know I've seen L somewhere. Where'd it go?
Games at launch because the retail partners get fucked and they aren't there to help us when we need to sell hardware later or whatever. But then also, we've got a certain amount of like, well, if the physical game prices have to go up too, why don't we just go ahead and raise all the fucking prices while we're at it? And then we'll just get that money. And then when the tariffs go away, we won't lower the prices. We'll just keep it there. What do you say? What do you say? And then if you really want to work down the line there, they probably also raise prices around the world to maintain parity there too. Now, who knows, right? I mean, there's no guarantee that any of that happens, and we'll see. But at the end of the day, I would assume that that this has the potential to fuck over people around the world, not just people in the States. Because, everyone will use that justification of like, well, we want to achieve price parity, not just with our digital goods here in the U.S., but also our price parity with stuff around the world. And so, well, we're going to do that. That could be bad. That could be bad. On the long list of things that could be bad over the next little bit here, maybe small potatoes, but also, yes, that's a video game specific thing that could certainly be fucked. Games already cost $100 in Canada. So, well, that's $100 in Canadian money. What if you could pay $140 in Canadian money while you're at it? 120, there's no. That doesn't mean anything. Like people love to just like do one-to-one comparisons and ignore exchange rates and all this other stuff whenever money comes up, and they go, well, games in Australia cost this many dollars. I'm like, yeah, I bet they do. They could cost more there too. Let's see here. Paul writes in and says, hey man, how about that 32X version of Space Harrier? It's really, really good. Yeah, it is. Yes. You're right, Paul. The 32X version of Space Harrier is a great port of the game. In this day and age, not a lot of reasons to go to it, right? Because, hey, the methods you have at your disposal to run the arcade version of Space Harrier are plentiful and are bountiful. But yes, that 32X version of Space Harrier, at the time, that version of Space Harrier suffered from what a lot of games of that size and scope did, in terms of like, they were asking too much money for it for what that game is. Space Harrier is one of my favorite games of all time. It's certainly somewhere on that list. But the very idea of spending a full retail price for another copy of Space Harrier, which has, it's 18 levels and that's it. More scenarios will soon be available. That turned out to be bullshit. I don't count Space Harrier 2, no one does. It was very hard to justify buying any version of Space Harrier at home. I think the last version I paid real money for was the
How the fuck does this fit? Like that. There we go.
Game, but that was a much more acceptable concept in that era. It wouldn't be that many years later that you're like, okay, I'm not spending this kind of money on a port of an arcade game unless it's going to do way more. Way more. Lauren writes in and says, I'm confused and curious. Maybe you can help. Why isn't the Switch the lead console? Unless Wikipedia is lying to me, as it sold more units than the current Sony and Microsoft consoles combined by a considerable margin. Chasing extremely high-res realistic graphics seems to be something no developer wants, and most consumers don't prioritize. It costs a lot of money and leads to massively ballooning teams that then go through massive waves of layoffs, whether the game performs well or not. And the best-selling games of all time include many games that are not traditionally high-quality graphics games. So, I mean, if the Switch has the largest install base, provides lower risk and lower cost development opportunity, why isn't the Switch the lead platform for more third parties? Why do they target consoles with lower sales and higher development costs? So, I mean, the reason comes down to a lot of capability and a lot of the differences between the Switch hardware and developing for Switch as opposed to developing for...
Why no?
Developing for x86
combined together. Why?
I do think this can change, and I do that's what we were talking about earlier, is that, you know, the launch of the Switch 2 provides a kind of clean slate opportunity for developers to maybe rethink some of this stuff. Based on, you know, their estimates about how well they think the Switch 2 will sell and all that sort of stuff.
Get in there,
you know, developers trying to cram
son of
a big game into a small hole, and the Switch's hole got smaller and smaller as time went on. You know, as that device became older and older and older, this many years on, like, yes, it has a huge install base. But also, it wasn't always the case, and it isn't always the case, that third-party games sold dramatically well on that platform. So you would have a situation where you're like, oh yeah, you spent a lot of money on this port, but like,
what is
Switch
not
users weren't really looking for that type of game, and, you know, they aren't really, you know, some of them are here for first-party Nintendo games and small indie games, and so on and so forth. And so that was the thing that I think traditionally kind of held back that sort of thing from taking hold on the Switch. But like I said,
yeah, hold on, let me just
this many years later,
let me just apply liquid right to it. Just a little water, you know.
And for a variety of reasons, it is not nearly as simple as just like, graphics are better, so now the games cost too much. Like, there's way more going on. So I don't want to be reductive about that specific aspect of this, because I think a lot of people try to boil it down to that, and that's incorrect. But again, the launch of a new platform with, you know, and kind of different priorities around this stuff does provide the potential for things to change, and I wonder if they will. And I wonder if they should.
There we go.
The thing about my thoughts about the Switch 2 is that maybe they should.
I'm building a Zoid. Another one.
Maybe this is this something that can help fix this ongoing problem?
It's Raven's Red Raptor from Zoid's Chaotic Century.
Matthew writes in and says, I was listening to
because that shit was fucking cool.
And heard ludicrous.
There's been multiple Zoids games. I have one for the GameCube that was kind of fucking sick.
What caught my attention wasn't the censorship itself, but rather the variety.
There was one on the 360 that I think was like a tactics game.
Of the following techniques, which is the best way to bleep a swear? Screams, record scratches, distortion.
And then I think they released
dog barks, silence,
one on the Switch.
Dog barks wins for me.
But that was for like the newest Zoid series. That was
I like
less of mechs and more of like people riding big robot animals.
I like the way,
and I didn't
DMX
like
radio
it.
Edits. You know, I am on the record as saying that I think a lot of the DMX radio edits, particularly for Party Up, is tremendous. You know, just like having DMX ad libs, whether that's him going, come on, you know, or whatever, over some of the swears, you know, or woo, like it's a great one. It's a great one. That's maybe the best in the business.
Is this supposed to?
If you're looking for one of the best radio edits of all time, it is DMX.
There, oh, that plugs in better. Ooh, I heard that click. There we go.
I like it when songs get re-recorded with completely different lyrics because it's so interesting to watch these artists contort their lyrics into these different forms. That doesn't happen very often, if at all, anymore. But that was so Two Live Crew put out, alongside As Nasty as They Want to Be, they put out As Clean as They Want to Be. And so you can listen to Funk Shop. And it's amazing. Yes, Purple Hills instead of Purple Pills by D12.
Motherfucking
good one. That was kind of maybe the end of that era.
Purple Gears.
That was starting to, kind of come to an end. And most artists don't do that anymore. Because the outlets aren't there that require it as much. And people don't listen to terrestrial radio all that much anymore, so they're just like, well, we're not going to.
What's the high set exam?
Work to make these clean versions of these songs because they're just the demand is not quite there anymore, so it just doesn't happen the same way it used to. NWA, there are clean versions of a lot of the songs on Straight Outta Compton. There's a clean version of Straight Outta Compton, and this stuff is kind of hard to find. A lot of that stuff doesn't exist on streaming services, and when you do find clean versions of these albums, they went back and redid them and just went and just blanked out the curses instead of having the radio friendly versions of the songs out there, and so that stuff is just kind of hard to you just don't see it as much. In that case, Fuck the Police just wasn't on that version of the album. And so, clean. So someone's saying the Chromacopia, the new Tyler the Creator album, came out with a clean version. Is it what I'm talking about? Did he re-record the songs, or did it just because clean versions of the albums exist all over the place, but they're usually not re-records. They're or rewrites. They blank them out. They do whatever. Anyway. So I'm a big fan of As Clean as They Want to Be, the Two Live Crew classic. There was an era there where
10,
DJ
11,
Premier was
8.
scratching
From
it's the humanoid being picked up in Defender noise. That little
8,
jingle of a
11,
human being picked up by a lander in Defender, and he was scratching that as over the tops of the curses, and it's fucking cool. And so it's it was a very specific era where there was some Method Man songs that had it, and I want to say it was one of the songs that was Limp Bizkit with Method Man that was maybe produced by Premier or something like that. Nagoya Shot asked, did they ever do a clean version of Throw the Dick by Two Live Crew? Yes, of course they did. I have to imagine you know that, but yes, Throw the D is in a lot of cases the more popular version of the song. But yeah, that's the Defender noise. Yes, and Together Now that is the song. Yes. Jim writes in with just a subject line. Is Too Human a bad game or just misunderstood? It's neither. It's a very middling game. I say that as someone who played a lot of Too Human when I reviewed it. There are things about that game that are certainly not good and definitely not great, but I don't think you would necessarily call it a bad game overall. It's a video game. You can play it. they had ideas about how to adapt a Diablo-style game to console in a way, in an era when that hadn't been done as many times as it has now. They didn't do a great job of some of those things. They tried to put in a few too many attacks that just didn't work very well. It was just hit both the sticks in the same direction, and then you'll stand there and do this flip. And it was just weird, awkward stuff there that they just weren't very good at making that stuff work in game. Two Human is just it's at best middle of the road. It is less than that, I would say. On a 10-point scale, it's probably not a 6. But it's not a 4 either. It's kind of 5. But there are certainly worse games out there than Two Human. But it's it's a game. It's a very messy game. The progression through it was fucking weird and dumb, and just not much fun. There's moments throughout that game that just feel like shit. Is it a bad game overall? No, it's I wouldn't call it okay, but I wouldn't call it bad either. It is somewhere in the middle of those two things. And that's a genre that I feel that style of action RPG. Now, controller support is kind of standard for the genre in a weird way. And a lot of developers have done a lot of work in that space, and it's totally that genre. It feels like a solved problem on console these days. At that time, it wasn't, and so they came up with a bunch of bad ideas. But also, I think the setting of that game was just stupid. The story, there was just so much around it.
Let's see.
Obviously, the death animation was
A10 and A1. So we're at 10 and 1.
But yeah, it's not the worst. It's not the worst thing. Pablo writes in and says, "My 6-year-old kid is currently playing Mario Kart on my old DS Lite."
A story?
Father?
The story about fucking what?
I played a lot of Mario Kart on, the regular DS version, the 3DS version. I had to play the GBA version a little bit. What makes you a bad father is that you sent me a photo of presumably your son playing Mario Kart on a Nintendo DS Lite, and he's not wearing a shirt.
Ask a question. How about a question? I'll answer a question. Q&A time. Ask some questions. Time. Cause fucking shit. I don't know. million, but a group of fifth graders decide what your name is for the rest of your life. Absolutely not. There's not a chance in hell I'm gonna let a bunch of fucking 11 and 12-year-olds, or 10 and 11, 10, 5th grade. I was 10. I'm not gonna let a bunch of 10-year-olds fucking dictate my fucking life going forward. Where they go, oh, $1 million money face. Because that's where they would go. Or like some new fucking Gen Alpha slur that they come up with. Nah, I think I'm good. I think I'm good on being called. What is Ohio? What the fuck does Ohio have to do with anything? I keep seeing Ohio, but I don't understand. Like skibbity and yeah, I get it. I understand that. Ohio is new. I used to be with it, and then they changed what it was. Now what I'm with isn't it, and what's it is new and scary to me. It'll happen to you. Big pieces. F-A-C. I don't need C. What is that? That's P-H-B-G-E. Where the fuck is D? Oh, it's this gold one. Gold! Look, I'm 33. I may be 33, but I'm like perpetually 25. And I will live forever. Yeah, man, I don't know nothing about no fucking so okay. So on the topic of skibbity, apparently they're trying to do a skibbity toilet movie, like officially. But then like there's a bunch of legal issues with it because a bunch of that shit just came out of assets out of Gary's Mod, which is Valve owned. My favorite childhood book. God, it was probably the fucking Harry Potter books. Like, not even. Like, if I had to think about it, it's probably just the Harry Potter books from when I was a kid. Which, like, for a lot of people my age and older, I don't know about the younger generations of these days. I don't know if they probably, some of them probably read it. It was a phenomenon. No. No, they shouldn't. Valve should not. Valve doesn't fucking make games anymore. This. Wait, no, this way? This. Just go in here. And then. Ooh. They did make Portal, and that was good. They got the idea for Portal from a game. I don't know if it was a direct game dev school or if it was a school that had a game dev department, like for learning. But Portal came as an idea from one of those like tech class student projects. And I had a copy of it for a while, along with some other, I guess you'd call them demos. Never played Portal 2, though. I mean, that's entirely up to you. I'm just here building models. I'm just out here living my best life. I have not. I heard a lot about it, though. Mechanically, it sounded pretty interesting. The Return of the Obra Dinn. Unfortunately, most of my gaming is exclusive to console because I did not grow up with a PC really powerful enough to play much that wasn't League of Legends. I just cut the wrong piece out, didn't I? Huh. I would not have expected it to be on Switch. It's like a murder mystery. You get to track down a bunch of memories on a boat. Maybe. I haven't touched my Switch in forever. Okay, get that on there. This goes on here. What? Am I looking at this right? There we go. What should you wear today? Well, what are you doing? You got plans? Making dinner, going to martial arts. Jeans and a black t-shirt tucked in, with a belt. Um, and like a pair of like sleek, like everyday, almost like work boots. Show up to that class like you mean business out of like Roadhouse, and then just start like roundhouse kicking people. Um, you could wear nothing but sweatpants. Yeah, just throughout the day, just, every 20 minutes, just change a different article of clothing. Why is that not? I feel like this should be snapping together here, and it's not. Ha-da-da-da-dum. Alright. Is there... There we go. Claw. And then we've got a second one here to make. I might as well just get them both out of the way. See ya. Have fun. little bit. A little bit of flashing on it.
Don't send shirtless photos of your children to people on the internet. Just don't do it.
I agree with that statement. Don't do that. What did I miss?
Let's see here. I think we have one more email before we... Mark from Scotland writes in and says, does the announcement of mouse functionality for the Switch 2, announcement is maybe a bold term, but sure. I get what you mean. Does it make you hopeful for a Mario Maker resurgence after the disappointment of the Switch version with no proper stylus control? We'll see. The Nintendo just has been so dedicated to not supporting Mario Maker in the ways that they should have. One or two. That the idea of them making a Mario Maker 3 feels insane.
D is gold. D is the gold one.
So yeah, it's hard for me to envision a world where they actually return to the well again and do Mario Maker 3. I do think that you could solve some of the issues that Mario Maker 2 had with level creation by giving players a mouse. But yeah, that would certainly be a decent way to
and then I imagine 4 will go on the opposite one.
But also, yes, people in chat are calling it. I think if you did another Mario Maker, I think the expectations would be that you would be taking it into 3D in some way. They're kind of they're not completely out of 2D games, but like they would, they're not going to make a Mario Maker Wonder theme for Mario Maker 3. So, are you then making Mario 64 Maker or something? I think that would be way too complicated for people, and that would be a disaster. In its own way, it's too complicated, and they just wouldn't do it. But I also don't think they can get away with a third game that's just like there's more 2D Mario. I also don't think that they care enough about that game to patch proper support for that mouse-like device into Mario Maker 2. I could be wrong there, or there could be some kind of backwards compatibility emulation component where they let you just put a mouse cursor on any screen and treat it like a touch screen anyway. That's a very clumsy solution that would not work as well as you would like. There are ways to play Mario Maker 2 with a mouse now. It's not what you want. Without more custom work done to make it control better. Maybe do a Kirby Maker. I don't know. Like, what other 2D thing could they do? I don't think Zelda is a very interesting one of those. Someone out there is making their indie fake Zelda Maker game that's on Steam, I think. Maybe Metroid. Maybe you could do Metroid. I think the complicated nature and the size of a general Metroid world is kind of weird, and it would be too daunting for most players to make a full Metroid. And so I think that a Metroid Maker would probably end up being a pretty bad idea. Kirby comes to mind. Starfy. You could do a Starfy Maker, but I think you'd really kind of be limited to what's a good 2D era like a good 2D Nintendo franchise that you could apply this sort of stuff to. It's a very limited, it feels like a very limited amount of things. So yeah, I don't know, third parties, yeah, you could get back to that, yeah, maybe Capcom makes another Mega Man Maker again like they did on PSP, and we get back to that. That would be interesting, I guess, but that's a totally different thing. Yeah, I mean, I would love to see them do it if they did it right, but I don't have any faith in them to do it right at this point because of what Mario Maker 2 was and the way that Mario Maker 2 was supported and the way that Nintendo kind of, like, anytime that anyone has a weird glitch that they're using to do fun things with the level creator, they always just fucking ripped it out, yanked the levels down, and shut it all down. Like, the makers of Mario Maker, the people responsible for managing Mario Maker, like, fucking hate fun. Instead of, like, it's something that, like, a smaller or more savvier dev would play into and go like, oh, okay, people are doing really weird stuff, unintended stuff with our tools in Mario Maker 2. Is there a way that we can, okay, we need to make sure that this is not going to crash the game, and we have to make sure that this is actually going to fucking, not fuck things up. But can we honor the spirit of this? Can we codify this and make this official and support this well? But like they, either didn't have the dev support to actually like focus on the game that much, which sounds like they did not. And also, yeah, they were very choosy about the sorts of things that they allowed into that game, and they shut the rest all the way down in a way that was a real bummer. That's part of the reason, they certainly did that in Mario Maker 1 as well, but I still think Mario Maker 1 is just a better game. Because the things they rolled out for that game to support it over time ended up being better. Like the stuff in Mario Maker 2 about making worlds and everything else, like that stuff's neat. That stuff's really neat. But the level creation being as underwhelming as it is. I bought styluses for Mario Maker 2. It sucked, man. It was just a fucking chore to make levels on that thing. It was really disappointing. Yeah, so yeah, I don't know. I Mario Maker as a concept is still one of the best things, period. It's one of the best things. Mario Maker 1 is an astounding fucking product. They fucking knocked it out of the park for like a cool first thing, and like just fucking awesome. One of the best things they've ever made. But they just, whether it's they're holding on too tight to the creation or what have you, like it just.
Wait, does it go this way?
When 2 came out, it just
it's gotta go this way,
like
right?
Superfluous, and the directions they went in to build on the first game for 2 were not the right directions. And yeah, it's a shame. It's a real shame. I would love to see them take another crack at it, but I think the things that they would need to change to make that thing awesome are things that they're maybe not quite so willing to do. So we will see. That's going to do it for the show. Thanks everybody for writing in. Podcast@guard.bike is the email address. You can send in your emails to me, and I will look at them. We'll be back next week with more, I think. If I have my calendar all lined up properly, we'll see if this all holds, but we may have a guest next week. So I'll have more details on that as soon as that solidifies.
Yeah. Whoop!
Hey, what's going on, everybody? everybody. Welcome to the program. It's the Jeff Gerstmann Show. I'm Jeff Gerstmann, joined
Quality
by Adam Boyd.
program.
Adam, how's it going, man?
Good, Jeff. How are you, bud?
I'm doing real good. Good to see you.
Good to see you, too.
Yeah, I feel like we talk on the phone and play video games.
Quality
but I have not
program.
seen you in,
Right here.
I don't
Face to face.
Yeah. It's been an eventful little time here. Well, a little time, whatever. You're out here launching something new, vibrato.
Brand new. Exclusive.
Brand new. We'll
World
get to that. But what have you been up to? What have you been doing? What have you been playing?
Oh, man, playing the game of life a
Yeah.
lot, you know, juggling 2 teenagers and playing games and starting a company. There's a lot of gamification of that side of things.
Mhm.
It's funny you were talking about, like, seeing each other, because my kids, so the kids these days, they
These
don't
damn
use
kids.
headsets.
Mhm.
They FaceTime each other, and so they just see each other's nostrils. So their phones are basically, like, all looking up at each other.
Oh, because they're all holding it
use
like
it.
this.
No,
and-
no, not like Johnny V.
Oh,
but
okay,
like-
okay. I thought they were. Okay.
No, they leave it on the table beside the keyboard, and they just leave it on. So because they want the video for some reason. instead of
That's
audio.
fucking wild. Children,
It's nice to be
get
able to
goddamn
see, right? It's
headphones.
just how they do things.
Yeah, my daughter, she's 5, and she came home from school. It's been a couple of times now, but we finally did it over the holiday break. There was someone who wanted to like get her on the phone and talk to her, and so
Sure.
and like text the mom and all this other stuff. And this boy wanted to get on the FaceTime with, and so like and he's like, "Look," I'm hearing his end of the conversation and occasionally seeing the phone and seeing that he's just like running around like a maniac, going like, "I got a lizard, and look at my lizard," and just like running around like a maniac. And then she's running outside, going, "Look at my bike, look at my bike," and her little brother, who's 3,
Yeah.
is running around behind her trying to be a part of it too, and it was just it's amazing to watch.
I love it.
Like, this is not an effective way to communicate at all, people. I don't know what we're doing. We're dropping the call over and over again. It's a disaster.
All of it's different, Jeff. That's gonna be that's the theme of our chat today. All of it's different.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's been like the last few years has been watching all of this stuff kind of change in really uncertain ways. But some things remain the same. Virtua Fighter 5 came out for PC.
Yeah.
And Virtua Fighter's back. I'm very happy to see that. I've been playing some of that. And it's been nice to get back into it. It's exciting to see Sega kind of returning to some of those franchises. Like, I don't know, man. I worry that it just seems like an opportunity for them to, like, a lot of games come back and they're bad, right? Or a lot of games come back and they're like, you have not capitalized on the thing that I remember about this.
Right.
And I always worry about that. But Virtua Fighter has been gone for so long that having even just this reissue of the last game, a reissue, because this came out on PS4 originally. But it's been really nice to play that. That's kind of what I've been playing. I mean, obviously you've been busy, starting up a new company and getting decks of cards printed and all this other stuff. And like, are you getting some time in, or is it just Call of Duty Zombies? And
it is a lot of that. I like to try new things usually, but then you're absolutely right though, Jeff. There's a comfort food sort of aspect I think of gaming, of like when you sit down and there's a million things to choose from, and you're like, I just want to sit down and like I know what I want to get. Like sometimes I want to go on a curiosity journey. Heard about some cool game and I want to check it out. Zombies for me last Call of Duty. Johnny and I played a ton of it. Johnny V and I. A ton. I love that extraction sort of aspect.
Yeah.
When I first fired up this version, and I know they went back to sort of the Cold War approach, I was like, and then it's like, I got Prestige 1. I'm like, okay. And then I got Prestige 2. I'm like, oh, okay.
All right.
And then it becomes like chicken soup for the soul in a weird way.
Yeah.
I just fired up through the dailies, which is kind of the way I work. But then when I'm chilling and I'm relaxing, that's an Astroneer night where I'm like going to explore my planet, get my sulfur, get my methane, get my silicone. And then Balatro, but the problem with Balatro on the phone is my eyes are getting bad and I need to wear glasses because the font is too small. So I gotta wear reading glasses to play Balatro.
I went to an optometrist a couple of years ago, and they went through the process and gave me a prescription.
Yeah.
And it was really great at distances beyond a monitor.
Sure.
And I was like, this is great. Driving has never been better. This doesn't solve anything that I like. I need something that works at this range.
Yeah.
And I haven't found, like, I bought readers at random, but I haven't found any that actually help. So it's definitely been like, ugh, I gotta figure something out
What
here.
is that? What am
That's the
I?
problem
Oh,
with
it's
mine
the
is,
tail.
like,
I'm
now
building a
with glasses
tail.
or now contacts.
Aha.
And the close reading, like anything
I
closer than
see.
that, which has never been a problem.
Why did I
Now
cut
can
this
read
piece
it.
out?
Yeah.
The contacts out I can read close. But now it's this weird thing of like, where I'm like, you know, I'm the guy at the restaurant turning on my freaking phone light just to read the menu. While I'm zooming in. So ridiculous, Dad. Turn it on under the table. So I'm like under the table, looking at the menu, zooming in, trying to make these eyes work, right? So,
Great. It's
the video games, it's really fun. Like playing games is good. And I just never not played, but it's funny you say Virtua Fighter 5 because I've been thinking about this a lot of like franchises that feel familiar the whole time through. And it's why, and I know you and I are both super fans of Ed Boon, but like to take a franchise for that long and have the kernel of it feel so consistent,
right?
And the wrapping and packaging and sub modes and stuff like that feels so innovative and evolutionary every time. It's just we just don't have creators like him that have that. I mean, of course, he's been doing it for 30 years, right?
Right.
So,
yeah.
But that consistency to know what you're trying to do, but also take in the changing taste of gamers, I think is really super fascinating. I think it's tough sometimes people throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's try something new.
Right.
That was sort of my reaction to zombies this season first, or this year first. I was like, man. And I'm like, no, okay, it's pretty comfortable one second. And we got to play the other night too.
Yeah. It was. That was like the first time I'd actually done like a good run in this year's game.
Yeah.
And it was all right. It was it was okay. Like I'm normally not a big zombies guy, but since you didn't play a lot of the older ones, like this is that kind of return to form of what they've been doing since like World at War.
Sure.
But a lot of that was way more confined and way more about like there is a window with you, climbing through it, and you can walk up to it and board the window up.
Sure.
And it was a little less currency based. Like there were currency, but there weren't like the two different currencies that they have now. And like over time, and I think it's what has made it annoying for me over the years, especially when you're matchmaking with strangers. Is over time they filled it full of all the Easter eggs and all the the weird vacuum gun that we went and got. They filled it full of that, and if you're a player who's just like jumping in for the first time, or you're not watching a bunch of YouTube videos about what you're supposed to do, all the other players have a very regimented way about how they play it, and you as a new player coming in, you're out in the cold, they're shitting on you constantly. Or whether you're voice chat or not, you're just it's impossible to feel like you're contributing properly by just like shooting fucking zombies, which is like
What I'm surprised though is actually like I've found shockingly that I've come across zero, like maybe one game. So I'm now about to go. I'm not bragging on my prestige level. I've just been playing a lot, and I'm not proud of it. Like I cheese tons of things. I go to direct mode, level 10 terminus station. You do the code entry, and then the zombies walk past you, and then you just get and you clear 35 in the round. So I'm timing like how can I get my camo unlocks as fast as even possible. But I've come across only probably one trash talker out of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of matches, and most people are like pretty chill, or they're first timers and they want to be Sherpa through the experience, or they're clueless and you just gotta go. And then Johnny gets really worked up about it. Over here, back up.
He's like turning on his voice chat just long enough to go like, hey dude, get on the rooftop. Well, like even the thing I'll say is like
it is overwhelming. It is overwhelming.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that you can do, or it's just like, what are we doing? Are we extracting? Why should we extract? I don't even understand what the benefit is. Do I get XP or do I get level ups? Where are the Easter eggs?
Well, I think they've done a little bit better about like handling some of that stuff where like, oh, they're gonna pop up on screen like, hey, there's a challenge happening and it's happening over here. Like that's stuff that they didn't do in years past. Like everything was a little bit more obfuscated, and so you were just kind of left to go like, okay, well I'm gonna go this way, and then someone would yell at you like, I can't believe you opened that door. You don't open that door until round 11, and you're like, fuck off. What the fuck am I doing? Like this is
it's like League of Legends zombies.
Basically, yeah.
You're totally wrong.
Yeah, dude. And so like like that mode has always been like really frustrating on that end of things. And I think they've done a little bit better of a job of like removing some of those aspects of it. Like that was the thing I was struck by when we were running around. Is like we were moving around all parts of that map.
Yes.
As opposed to like moving through it and going, we're gonna hole up here,
yeah.
and this is the spot, and then we guard this window. And, you know, like it was a lot more like, oh, I'm gonna go over here and upgrade this weapon. And I was like, okay, and you could go do that alone without it. You know, okay, everyone has to come with me, and we have to do this, and you know, like it was a little bit easier for people to just get around. And
yeah, now you're almost managing. Nice. It's like one of those marble boards, right? Where you're like managing almost the flow. Like the zombies are fluid that you're trying to sort of manage through the level, and you don't get backed into a corner. That's the only time people go down or playing poorly is when they're just getting cornered. And I do it a lot.
Yeah.
Time, but so it's that fluidity, and I kind of like that dance. Like it's just rare nowadays that you're allowed to be an authority in anything in the gaming space, and PvE is just my jam. You know.
Yeah.
So, and that's just, you know, played a lot of Helldivers 2 when it first came out, played a lot of Space Marine 2. Johnny and I just play a lot of like co-op stuff together.
Right.
But then, you know, this one just felt like sort of just home for a bit, you know, and it's one of those things that I don't recommend to people per se, not because I don't like it, but it's like, you almost like, I don't want to say pick your poison. It's my donut, you know, green, which for now, and then it's gonna be something new, you know, in a few months, I'm sure.
New map out today.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, season 2 just started today. I'm looking at Steam over here.
All right.
22 gig download.
All right, gotta watch my TikTok. So I use TikTok as a task list maker when new games come out. Pretty amazing. They'll push me like cheats and cheeses, and then I like them, and I go through the level, and then I unlike each video as I finish that task. I did it with Elden Ring, massive sort of leveling up and stuff like that. But it's kind of, I don't think they were ever meant to use it that way.
Right.
But it's a really, really efficient way.
I was briefly doing that, also for Call of Duty, weirdly enough. But like, because there's a lot of videos of people, and they're always presented in the worst way. But it, you know, it's like people are like, here's the most broken meta build for this submachine gun, and here's
you believe.
First, you need to attach
the brand of
yes, you won't believe the 6th number on, and you know, and they're telling you like, here's the loadout to use right now. The funny thing about this year's game is the way that they've redone all of the loadout stuff is like they've simplified it in ways that any average person can just eyeball it and go like, no, this is what I like. I like it when the gun aims down sights faster. This is what I'm going to put on the gun.
Yeah.
I like having a suppress, and so you can just kind of do that.
Yeah.
And not have to dick around with all the and then you need to, because it used to be you would put on the attachments, and then you would eventually unlock the ability to put sliders on all the attachments. So you go like, well, I want to bias this way 10%, and it just sucked.
Yeah.
like at the time it was like kind of cool, but it's one of those things in retrospect you realize, like I don't want to spend time moving these sliders and going like, does this gun kick a little bit more now or less?
Like, or so do I really want to tune the braking and slide? I'm like, I'm
exactly.
not.
Like, no, dude.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not. So yeah, that's been ridiculous. But yeah, Call of Duty actually, you talk about comfort food, like the competitive multiplayer was and probably still is, at least for a while here.
Yeah.
That kind of like, it's like that end of the night, like I'm about to go to bed, but I'm just going to get a couple of rounds of this in, just, and it's funny because like, you know, people think about it as like this big esports whatever, and I'm coming at it from the exact opposite. Like, no, I'm not terrible at the game. Like, I'm all right.
Yeah.
But I'm not necessarily esports good. But
sure.
I also don't want to be. I wouldn't want to play that game that seriously. It would take all of the fun out of it.
Totally.
Is that something, because like obviously, coming from Iron Galaxy, a bit of a fighting game background there.
Yeah.
Hot hits like Killer Instinct and Dive Kick. Like that type of esports, or like obviously like fighting games lend themselves very well to that sort of thing. But like sometimes I feel like the rise of esports and the dedication that some people have to having an esports strategy for their competitive game before they've proven that anyone wants to play it in the first place, like seems like a net negative for video games. Is that what do you think about?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think I remember I was invited to speak at a conference about esports, right? And it was all these people that had acquired, clubs and all this stuff. And I was just like spending the idea that people spent $50 million to own a club of a game that they didn't own at a franchise in a town that they had the rights to was just always, I mean, amazing business strategy.
Someone was getting
all
paid
the money
somewhere.
But like, if you own the sport, you own the esport. You know what I mean? Like, if you own the game and create the game, and $50 million can make a pretty awesome game. I mean, that's way above the budget of like a Rumbleverse. And so,
sure,
if each of those, if like, well, I mean, how many franchises they sell? 12 or 16 of them? $50 million in each of them?
Yeah,
I'm like that. That's basically, you know, you can make a Last of Us, a big multiplayer game. You can make it like 3 huge games, or you could make 15 small ones. Yeah, I think a lot of times esports strategies are sort of a bit cart before the horse, right?
Yeah.
You don't build a game just to build a community. The community follows the game that's been built. And then if it makes sense for esports, like a lot of people approached us during Rumbleverse's development, what's your esports strategy? I'm like, when the game gets there, and if people want it in that way, shape, and form, then we'll figure out a great way. And, you know, Fortnite figured out, but even when they figured out with Call of Duty, like watching Call of Duty or Madden or FIFA, competitively is, in my opinion, way less fun than watching League. Because League's got all the camera systems and you can see the characters and then you have the editors in the back going through. And COD has always been like, you're just watching you're watching like, you know, the drone cam, or you're watching as first person or third person, and you just can't get the setups and you don't understand who's playing where the.
Well, it's definitely a thing. Like it's a case where you need to know the game a lot better.
Yeah.
Because you need to know, oh, this map is like this, and here's why they're doing it. Like it never felt like a good. Even as someone who would learn those maps, they're just like, I don't want to watch this. And so first person games,
right? It's kind of like why, even though I love, as a Canadian, love to trash talk American football. Right?
Sure.
You know, the game where they throw things with their hands, football. That one.
Right. Yeah,
you know, when you're watching, why, like, you get to see the plays get created, and I think with an FPS where it's not a team-based thing. It's not like you're playing roles. Like an Overwatch or
League. Even in Overwatch, it's still, I think part of it's just the camera, just like, you know, like, yes, there are setups, and even in Call of Duty, they're gonna like, okay, 2 of us are going this way, 3 are, you know, they'll have strategy, but it's not basketball, it's not, and it's not Dota, it's not League, like you know, you can see that stuff from above and see that bird's eye view of what's happening, and it works.
It does. And so not too many people are like, just I can add it on to my game, or my game will
this
ready. And then it's like, then the community, the training. You know, the fascinating stat that I learned, it's probably different now, but like the average esports player retires at 20. Right. So you're talking about if their peak reaction times are at 16, so that means they have to be like practicing and getting into the game at 12. Let's talk about maturity level and stuff like that by then.
And how easy it you know, and how many of those players have been totally taken advantage of financially by a lot of these organizations. 100%. And yes, the amount of fucking sleazy business dude Coke party looking guys that are in and around esports.
Come to the cool house. You can move to the cool house. We'll pay you to the cool house. We'll give you a contract where, you know, we expense everything on the cool house, and all of a sudden you're like, wait, what am I actually making? What do I own in this sort of entity? It's
the cool house.
Yeah, I'm looking at the cool house. Check it out.
What else do you want, man? Start a TikTok.
Right.
Yeah.
It's changing, Jeff. It's different, for sure.
Well, I feel like it's even changing from that. Like, you know, like you've seen a lot of reports.
Influencers used to drive. Like, influencer would talk about a game, and then install base would go, you know, hockey stick.
Whoops.
Right.
Nowadays, it's just not the same. It's like, it's more ingredients are required for something to sort of catch viral, and people just like me right now with my zombies, you know, comfort food, to get me away from something I'm comfortable in. And now games are bigger than ever before, and they're broader, and there's no modes. Like, you go in a game, and there's 100 different games to play with.
There we go.
You know, whether it's Roblox or Fortnite or even COD with the different modes.
There we go.
Like,
okay.
Right, there's not a lot of incentive to try new things.
That's attached.
There's also no places that we go, no singular sort of sources of information.
We're
like, oh, I'll just go to the new news thing. It's like, no, I got a little
God.
I saw this TikTok video for 8 seconds. So I think that's a challenge too. Our eyeballs are drawn into different directions.
Yeah, I think I think there are a lot of different. I mean, so that's my. So you're starting Vibrato. It's a consulting company. Like, what are the goals here? How did you come to this? You previously you were CEO, co-CEO of Iron Galaxy. And obviously you were at PlayStation running some things there.
Yes.
And Beefy Media prior to that, and Capcom, and like all this other stuff. Like, how have all those steps led you to kind of getting out there on your own again and starting something new?
Yeah.
What is it?
This is probably the section in which a lot of people are going to roll their eyes and back of their heads, because when I talk about my career and the 4-year bug that I get, so I'm like a 4-year person. Almost every company until Iron Galaxy was max 4 years. So my first job in QA in '96, EA, 4 years. I left games for a couple of years to do some startup stuff, which was interesting. But when I came back, it was like Next Level Games was a shorter stint. That was like a 1.5-year contract. Then Midway was 4 years, right, where I met the beloved John Bignacchi, ex-roommate, current best friend. Then after that, I went to Capcom, and that was 4 years. And then DC Media was 2 and change. And then the PlayStation job opened up, and that was 4 years. In our Galaxy, 8 years was amazing. I think it hit the 4-year point. I didn't think about it because COVID happened, and when you're sort of taking care of a large group of people, and I think at the time we were 110 people at the company, then your motivations and your sort of worldview changes, and you're like, okay, our job is to make sure that there's safety and security for the people that are here. And that's probably what extended my timeline, which I never actually articulated. I was like, oh, I'm a 4 years guy, then I have to leave. It's just, I have this weird, like, spirit animal that sort of awakens within me, like, what are you going to do now? And actually, one of the important books I read is a book called Drive. I always forget the author for it, but you can look it up.
Why?
And it talks about these 3
says I can use
aspects of when you're thinking
15,
about the
but
job that you're in.
also it shows 14,
It
so I wonder if those
provides
are
these 3 things, and you're on a really good path.
interchangeable.
The first one is autonomy, right? So you have freedom to make decisions. The second is a path to mastery, right? So you have people around you, or you have things you're learning. And the third is a sense of purpose, right? Whether the organization gives you purpose, or you know exactly what you're doing. And oftentimes when I make a big decision, it's because I realize that one of those 3 things, or 2 of those 3 things, or maybe 3 of those 3 things are no longer, I don't have those things anymore. Iron Galaxy was a lot different though. Because like I was happy, we're doing cool stuff, we have an awesome team. It was more of me like, okay, I'm rounding the bend, once you hit 50, I feel like a lot of things start to, I'm almost there.
Sure.
Things that come into clarity of what you want to do. And I was like, do I make a little game by myself or a little group of people? Do I create a publisher? And I started talking to a lot of friends in the games industry about their challenges. And the question was kind of goofy when I first started asking. It was like, what is the biggest problem in the video games industry?
What is this?
And for some reason, the very first person...
Did these combine together?
I pulled out my phone and I wrote down their answer. And I still have them in order of all the answers.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so the first 10 people...
I'm going to use 14 instead of 15.
Gave me 10 different answers.
I'll put 15 off to the side.
Okay. No repeat.
I don't know what that peg is for.
It was studio heads, it was executives, it was very senior people.
Oh, I wonder. Oh, you know what? I know what this is.
A lot of people, marketing backgrounds.
This is a
next 20 people I asked,
peg
18.
for a display.
And I kept asking, and I kept realizing. So that was my revelation.
So this is the body. This is going to have the legs coming off of it, and then the tail. This is a peg hole, so that way you can have it on like a stand or something. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, fuck it. I'll leave it in there.
Right.
You get more than 10 answers, right? What's the rule of Family Feud, right? Top 10 answers on the board.
Right.
Not top 90 answers.
Not yet, definitely.
So that was my inspiration of like, okay, what's going on in the industry? Like, what's actually happening here? And each person was so fervent with that their belief in that one thing is the one thing that's preventing us from greatness or current sort of blockade. And then I started asking, well, how are we solving these problems? And that's when it was kind of like, you hear birds chirping, or we're asking other professionals from other industries, or we're asking big tech consultancies, or we're, going to New York, Boston.
We brought a financial guy in, and he's going to solve it for us. And
yeah, and I've been in those rooms before, and in sort of a lot. It's kind of like anything with business consulting. Be like,
oh wait, I'm missing a piece.
I think the challenge is when you're a publicly traded company, right? You don't have autonomy. You work for the market, right? The market basically. You can make a bunch of ideas and you can try to grow, but as soon as you're trying to grow in a certain direction, the market will snap back unless you have people that are guiding you or giving you advice. And a lot of times that advice is extract more revenue to increase our profits, right? It's capitalism 101. I'm not telling anyone in this chat or watching that things they don't know.
Yeah.
But what I realized that when you're just pursuing purely capital extraction for video games, you're pushing us in the wrong direction, right? You're actually pushing us to more MTX and not necessarily higher priced products. I believe in you should never feel guilty about the purchases you make in a game, right? I remember the time when Farmville and all the Facebook games, that's the one time in my life when I would drop $100 and be like, I feel disgusted. It was the analogy I would use.
It was like
getting an extra large popcorn bucket at the movie theater, eating it, and be like, I'm still starving.
Right.
You know, and that was 4,000 calories.
I was gonna say it was like getting 2 large pizzas instead of just one. Just like, oh god, I'm
and then you eat them and
I'm
you're
a
like
dirty boy.
And so what I realized that by us just pursuing the capital extraction and just going risk averse and just trying to reduce costs and just increasing top line revenue, we're losing the plot of the heart and soul of our industry. And that's where we are selling products, software products, but they're equal parts art and culture and love and passion and context. And so the longevity and stability of our industry, I think, is actually under attack. And that's sort of where I was like, okay, so what could a person do? Or what could companies do? Or what could organizations do? I started making a list of all the different things that I was able to impact when I was at PlayStation, or even with Iron Galaxy, with having Chelsea and Dave by my side, being able to make differences and build a vision for what we're trying to do. And then I was like, well, what if I did it on my own and then built a squad of people that sort of I could rely upon, that we could go and solve some of the biggest, chunkiest problems. And not solve, I think that's very presumptive of me, thinking I could go in and I know more than any executive out there.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes, when the pressure is just to deliver financial results,
there's a bunch of sprues here.
Feel right? And I think there's a way for us to navigate.
But like the more that I'm building, this set isn't all that crazy. This is actually pretty simple. I might actually be able to finish this today.
I really honestly do. So
I probably won't. But if I stuck with it, I could very easily finish this today.
Big sort of New York consultancies. How do we create one that's heart and soul, operator centric? Right. I've now done the developer.
A4 and A6.
Publisher track. I've done the platform track.
Oh, A6 was the piece I cut out earlier by accident. Cool.
Right.
It's like, and as a father, you'll appreciate this. It's like when you try to get advice from people that don't have kids, and they're like, what you should do, and you're like, oh, should I? Right? And that's what I feel like a lot of people that come into this industry are like, I've been reading that in the Reddit that you should probably change this or that.
I was hearing that the blockchain was a big deal. Maybe have you considered getting into that? Yeah, it definitely feels like that's been like over the last handful of years. It's not necessarily like, the industry is like taking a lot of bad advice, in terms of like, okay, we've got to figure out where the money is. And it's the thing I always think about is earnings call season. And when you always get to the Q&A and there's always some guy who pipes up and goes, and for a longest time, it was, what's your esports strategy? And before that, it was, what's your mobile strategy? And then at some point after that, it was, what's your VR strategy? And what's your blockchain strategy? And now it's, what's your AI strategy? And all of it seems like just this, all of them seem like different types of dead ends. And I used to get that on the coverage end where people, some suit would come down from on high and be like, what are you doing to better cover mobile games? And I'd be like, dude, we're not. Like, that audience is not interested in consuming, like, our audience doesn't want to consume that type of content, and the people consuming that type of content can just click a button and try it. They don't need to go read a bunch of reviews about blackjack and this is pre-iPhone, but we went out and we bought, we went out and bought like a site that was doing mobile reviews, and they all came in under me. And so suddenly I had like 3 or 4 people that were just like, they're out there reviewing like on pre-smartphone. And it's literally like, there's 9 different versions of Asphalt 2, depending on what kind of phone you have. And you're like, okay, why would you review any of them? Because they're all different enough that who does this help? Right. And so that was always an insane thing. And it seems like that, people at, high levels in game companies are always being asked, like, what are you doing to capitalize on the next big thing? And sometimes that thing doesn't seem like it actually is helping make games better or more attractive to players or anything.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it is a byproduct of sort of what happened during COVID, right? It was a very anomalous sort of point in societal and culture and humanity. And I think like it's natural if you are running a company that's profitable and is run and shareholders you're growing and the growth is good and good and good, you just go choose point here and extend out that way, right? Yeah. I think the challenge is that when we corrected, it was like a light correction, and then some companies overcorrected, and now we're sort of seeing this ebb and flow, sort of like roller coaster scenario with earnings and performance. And I do think, what? Go ahead.
How did that happen? Like I feel like a crazy person, but like it feels like anyone with half a brain knew that like, oh, everyone's going to eventually have to go back to work, and they're not going to sit around and play games all day. So eventually, the insane growth that video games are seeing is not sustainable. Like even then, when it was happening, it was this feeling of like, I don't know, why is this, you know, and it feels like everyone running a public company just went like, this is going to be great forever. Let's hire a ton of people. And I'm in black and white now. I don't know why. I don't know what happened here.
I think you've been in black and white the whole time. It's like I'm going back to the old days. I go back.
Yeah. Back in my day. Yeah. Well, I can't fix it, so I don't know.
Black and white forever.
Yeah.
We would run the filter on me. It's a complicated answer, and there's no villain. If you think about it's a wave, right? When you're running a public company, and you have shareholders, and you have a board, and things are growing. And you go, you know what? I think it's not going to grow. Like, everyone wants value creation, right? Sure. Everyone wants capital to rise, and they want their stocks to rise. And so if you're trying to be like, well, I want to save.
No, that's not here. That's over there.
And save for a rainy day. Some developers I know did.
Well, fine.
But then the problem is it was also like the transaction market for acquisitions was super high.
Yeah.
And so it was like kind of this fervor all around.
So I need 18.
It's hard when all that's happening to
and
pause.
I'm going to need the other one from the identical sprue.
Because in the end, the corrections that did happen, you know, the market cap didn't plummet for many of these big companies as much as they would usually commensurately with the amount of staff that they let off. Or profitability largely isn't down astronomically. It's like single digit off, right? And it's, you know, a lot of the trends that we're extrapolating are like, hey, it's the same, many of the same games that are making the same money, but it's still Call of Duty is doing great.
All right. Oh, there's still another piece I'm missing. But first, I'll be right back. All right. Oh. Back to action.
GTA 6 will still be a massive cataclysmic event in
Yeah.
But you're right. It's easy to sit, and this is the thing why, you know, observers versus people in the rooms oftentimes have their take.
I don't know
and
what this
again,
button
respect that
does.
everyone
What's
has
this
an
do?
opinion. But it's very difficult, I think,
I don't need a
sometimes for people
retouch.
to understand all the moving parts within an organization like that. If your staff is excited about the growth and your shareholders are, and the gamers are playing more than ever before, and you're the party pooper as the CEO, be like, yeah, we're not going to do it, because then your bonuses gets. I mean, a lot of things impact. Yes, that's a lot of.
Everyone's incentivized to just
everyone's
like
incentivized to like
pretend it's going to last
and then the
forever.
snapback.
Yeah.
I think the challenge is the snapback. The punishment doesn't fit. I don't want to call it crime, but like the when it gets back to normalcy.
Yeah.
There isn't there isn't consequences.
All right.
Usually, right?
Right.
Aside from the employees,
One of
the
these.
lowest,
Of course.
the
Yes.
total
All of
pool.
those people are paying.
F16.
That's the heartbreaking part. That's the part that.
It's this piece
And I
here.
love,
I need one
some
from
of your
both
stuff what he's doing
sprues.
with his job boards and his community is incredible. Anyone to sort of take the helm and say, hey, listen, here's a website where you can go to find jobs. But many of these people won't come back to games because of that sort of instability. And I don't blame them, right? And the bottom line is that our industry does make a lot of money, makes a lot of people happy. It also takes a lot of risks, and we try to keep it stable. But it's tumultuous, and I think this is just these last few years of tumult
So
have sort
it's
of
small.
shown us from the layoffs to studio closures, which is I think equally a tragic tale.
Between this,
it's just a bummer. And so, but I think the thing is, people will never
and
stop playing
this.
games. Right, more people will continue to play games every day than ever before. The future is super bright, and it's just a matter of we need to be realistic about.
Pretty symmetrical all the way across, so I don't really have to worry about them being
that was the sort of
separately numbered, because technically these are
if not
2
me,
and
then
4,
when
but they
someone set up to be
all
like, hey, let's
seem
work
completely
together
identical.
to try to build some lighthouses or guide points. Like we spawn on a new planet, no one's built the maps yet, so let's just pause instead of freaking out and old person yelling at clouds. Let's actually go step by step. Let's go
file down some of the
half a mile tonight and write down how, and then we'll go a mile tomorrow, and we'll just
flashing.
We got to kind of relearn how we make products, how we advertise products, how we acquire gamers and players. It's really
like discoverability, and I'm sure that's something that you heard at least once. Is just like discoverability seems like
it was
super broken. Whether it's the eShop or the PlayStation Store or the like complete destruction of traditional games journalism, and, like there's just it just seems harder than ever. I mean, like I do this for a living, and I have for a very long time, and even I'm like,
there's still a slight difference. Like,
wait, what came out? This came out when? Really? And
back in the day it was like 3 years. You got to announce it 3 years and a half, 3.5 years beforehand.
Right. Yeah. And well, I think
awareness.
And start pre-orders and all the other stuff that maybe doesn't matter quite as much as it used to, with retail not being as big of a deal. But yeah. So I mean, what types of things do you envision yourself going into companies to work on? I mean, like when I think about consultants, I tend to think about it from the perspective of like a lot of the people that I know, a lot of my peers that got into consultancy, it's very much that like mock review track. It's very much like, oh, someone's having an argument about if this game is good or not, or if this feature is good or not, and I'm going to come in and tell them yes or no, like, hey, you're on the right track, or no, I don't think this is going to resonate, or you know, like that type of, those types of things in development. But hearing you talk about it, it sounds like you're thinking about it at a much higher level than like, yeah, this gun is overpowered, or this mode is bad, or whatever.
Yeah, because those changes will sort of impact, and it's again why we're not focusing on small startups or indie studios or people that have been impacted by layoffs. There's a lot of people right now that are trying to sort of address those issues and help on those fronts. And many viewers right now are about to, again, I mentioned the eye roll before, but as soon as we start talking about how corporations operate and how big companies
this is a
work
piece
and
that's
performance indicators and
scary. I don't want to
and stuff
fucking
like
lose
it
that.
gets pretty boring pretty quickly. Every company is driving towards a set of goals, right? It's a goal that the company sets, the executive team sets, and then the different departments sort of set those up. And a lot of times it's like thinking outside the box, right? You guys are approaching things. People are very smart. Like, they don't need, the world doesn't require consultants, to exist. They can just keep trying things. A lot of times, though, from my perspective specifically, people that are in executive positions may not have development background and or how to work with a platform. And also aren't tapped into sort of the zeitgeist of the day, right? Aren't sharing TikToks with the kids every day, for all the pluses and minuses that brings our family. And not that makes you, the authority on anything, but just sort of having your hand in the water, I think, is an important part of it. So you go in and sort of first thing you want to do is ensure that they want to improve, that there's areas that they're interested in improving. Because if you're trying to sell your services to someone that thinks that they're doing well and they're on a good path, good luck, right? It's like,
of course,
yeah. So, and it's just starting with a small thing where you can show impact, right? Our goal, when I started this, was never to be like, want to work with one for 5 years. Like, that means you're not being very effective. We want to be working with someone for
we need
3, 6, 9, 12 months to sort of build some proposal, build some approach, build some strategies, oversee it. We can be fractional sort of leadership teams and stuff like that to plug into theirs. But a lot of it is just jamming and thinking outside the box. It's difficult for people to approach the same problem over and over and over again without, like, have you thought about this and have you thought about that? And I liken it to sort of a personal trainer. You can be really, really good at working out. That's why Michael Jordan had, Phil as his coach, makes you better. Having personal trainers, having people around you. I was very lucky when I joined PlayStation. They one of the perks was they gave you a mentor, right? An executive coach, and I took them up on that, and that has absolutely transformed my life from a sort of career perspective. Because just someone else to talk to these problems to, and someone that can understand it, right? A lot of people that do it are just, whether they're from the education background and they've just sort of read books on it, which is great too, or a lot of people that are sort of go straight into from grad school and MBA school into consultancy. You've never ran something or had the submission don't break and you have to send a new QA person on a flight with a disc in their hand to submit it. And legal just told you that you accidentally put a logo of a magazine on the cover of art of a game that you worked on. Just like examples like that, hypothetically speaking. Unless you've been in those situations, I think it's a lot harder for people to understand. So, but we'll see. I mean, this has never really been built at scale before.
Right.
So it's an at-bat. Try it out. I'm a big believer in it. I've got a lot of people in my advisory network and in the industry that believe in the approach. Like I said, to gamers out there, it's going to sound pretty boring. To me, though, it's like the hardest game out there, right? It's new game because stakes are real. Jobs are at risk. Stability is at risk. The fun of the future, innovation of the future, and if we don't do something now, I feel like our industry can sort of continue on this weird, off track to just become purely focused on money being taken. And I don't like that. I want our industry to be healthy, happy, and here for a long time.
Yeah. How do you feel about, one of the other kind of larger topics that's been happening lately has been around game budgets and how big they've been getting, and these games that have to sell, 15 million copies just to break even or whatever it is. And it seems like that's been, certainly one of the big approaches out of someone like, PlayStation these days. But, the one of the things I think I see out of the community a lot of the time is people going like, man, why won't they just make these smaller games, or why won't they, and some of it gets wrapped up in like, they should make a sequel to this game I like that they haven't touched in a long time. And that doesn't need to be the biggest game in the world. And you think that there's a path forward where some of these publishers that focus on these massive AAA, 4K extravaganzas, that they instead go, okay, we're actually going to place more smaller bets? Like I think about it like Midway, that kind of mid-tier publisher that kind of went away, that doesn't exist anymore. But like Midway put out a lot of games in an era when publishers were putting out a lot of games. They weren't all great, you're like, oh, well, okay, here's Dr. Mudo and here's this, like whatever the hell else is happening.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's like a viable way forward, or is it just like why does that happen? Is it like people that don't really know games calling the shots and going, no, we only want to place the biggest bets? Like, how does this stuff work these days?
Yeah, that's a great question, dude. And this could be its own sort of like 8-point series, podcast. So
we'll get to that.
Yeah, you're right. Innovation comes in smaller packages. We look back the last 10 years of the games industry, and we see things that went sort of thermonuclear, right? Went sort of hyperviral. How you came from a big publisher, right? Maybe Valorant was the last one, right? That actually came from the big company. I mean, you hear about it. I guess.
Now pause this real quick.
Right.
It's so each buddy.
All right, we're back. Had to check my email real quick, but the only thing I have right now on me is my phone, which I'm recording this.
The thing that's important to understand, and with DICE around the corner, it's a big conference that we do in Las Vegas that the games industry does.
Yeah.
There's a perfect analogy in here that will help some of the viewers, I think, understand. Not necessarily agree with, which is fine, because I have the same perspective. Don't make a $500 million game.
Right.
Make $105 million games. That's really simple, right? Just do that. And then we'll see what happens. So if you think about going to Vegas, and it's funny because I want to learn craps one time. I was in Vegas, and Andrew Renee was in town at the same time, and I said, let's go to Fremont Street, which is sort of old Vegas.
Yeah.
And they had a 25-cent table to learn craps.
Yeah.
And so I was basically learning craps, and I think that night I spent $40. I got my 5 free Miller Lights or whatever crap I was drinking. Probably Captain Diets. One pile of rum for your face and mine.
Exactly.
But that night we spent $40 and I learned craps. And then the next night we're on the Strip and we're at the Bellagio, and it's like minimum bet $20. And I was like, that's a lot of money. I just want to enjoy this. And then I look over in the high rollers room, and it's minimum bet's $10,000. And then another table's minimum bet $100,000. And so if you think about the different groups of old business owners, corporations in the games industry, right? Indies are Fremont Street. They're playing small stakes.
Mm-hmm.
The mid-stake, the regular tables at Bellagio or at Aria or whatever, Cosmo, are like, that's the sort of mid-tier publishers. And then the big guys need to make big bets to make big money. And there was a famous executive that would always say, if it's not $1 billion idea, we don't want to talk about it. And it does seem broken. It seems like that's, but in order to, and I don't believe in the approach. I don't think if you took any group of 10 executives, or even game developers.
Did I assemble this wrong?
If you did like a Survivor.
I feel like I've made 2 of the same piece.
And said at the end of this challenge, of this 2-week challenge, one of you will get $250 million.
Is there another set on here?
Jeff, that game's not 85 plus right now. It's just not.
Yeah.
Like building
F2,
a game from scratch. Well, first of all, building a team from scratch.
And F3.
And I know I'm going to say all this stuff. And you're like, Marvel Rivals. Like, sure. That is
F2 and F3.
But building a game from scratch with a brand new team to a product that's going to be widely coveted. Yeah, I mean, Helldivers 2 is a great example. It was game 6 for them. Game 5 or 6, I think, for Arrowhead, right?
Yeah.
And their games were awesome before that.
Yeah.
So building a team from scratch.
I see what I did.
Scale to that magnitude, right?
Fuck.
And the
All right.
old era where among many companies that
Well,
have made
very
these
carefully.
we all love and celebrate and covet, that were $100+ million games. Those are teams that usually have been in existence for a decade, maybe 2, right? So, and we think about Nintendo, right? They wrote
Very delicately.
People have been making games for almost 40 years together.
Yeah.
It's the same sort of designers working with each other, and that's where that sort of musculature and that sort of memory. And when you're on a team, it's better than the sum of the parts, right? Some of the greatest teams that have won championships. It's not like one player. You can point to one player. You know, sometimes it's like you point to the whole entire team together. So that's, I think, the misnomer is that you can just pick a team, anoint them with a budget, and they're going to create lightning in a bottle. I think that's just a very, very today. And the other part of it is the internet now wants to dunk on anything that a lot of people are betting on or putting a lot of potential into versus earn. Something that comes out of nowhere and just is in early access, or that they learn about through their friends or was on, you know, Patreon years ago, and then they saw another update and stuff like that. Like that can sort of gain respect and over time.
Right.
But this game is going to be the world killer game, and it's from scratch. I think it's just, I agree with most people's sentiment that is not the right path. Unfortunately, if you are that big player in the high roller room, you know, even though you and I both go and Noah is like, no, just take all that money and go to Fremont Street. Just like,
right. Yeah.
Just make 100 bets.
Yeah.
Right. That's not how it all works. It's not that simple. I know it's not an answer that anyone will be excited about, but it's kind of the reality of the world. And I think that's part of it. That there's different approaches. There's different approaches that they can take that is a little bit outside the box, you know?
Yeah, and I think that part of it has been that way for a really long time. It's just the stakes have gotten bigger. But I remember talking to people that were at EA, God, this is 10 or 15 years ago or something, and hearing them get really frustrated with all of the stuff they were trying to pitch. And a lot of them would be like, you know, EA owns all this crazy IP. Desert Strike, you know, whatever, like Ultimate, you know, like all of the stuff that they still have their hands on. And they would have these pitches for games like that and just get they wouldn't even get the meeting to pitch it because it'd be like, unless this is a X number of $1 million idea, don't even bring it to us. Like, we don't even care, dude. And so it limited the number of types, you know, the different types of pitches that people could even come up with internally. Because they're like, well, they only want to hear things that are going to make this amount of money, and this IP or, you know, our tiny helicopter game is never going to get there. And it was always very frustrating, but like I could understand it. And I think over the years, as that's just gotten, you know, it's not just old IPs that I remember as a kid, it's new IP, it's just everything across the board. It's not necessarily that. Sometimes it feels like, you know, like the easy thing to say is that the game industry has become very risk averse with a lot of these things, but like it just feels like a very different type of risk ultimately, you know?
Yeah, it's like it's more risk forward when you think about betting $300 million or plus on a product.
Especially if you're just like, well, we got this live service game in the tank and we're gonna put it out there, and it's gonna sit alongside all of these other live service games that are making a ton of money, and we think we can chip away X% and monetize them at this rate, and we think that that'll catch up. Like, that stuff just feels crazy to me these days.
Yeah, I think it's because more people have more opportunity. It goes back to a point you touched on earlier, the discoverability part of like, before we used to have people sitting in chairs in home watching television commercials and going to movies and going to the 7 websites that had video game news. And now, just to capture awareness, right? If there isn't some, you know, Paul Brother versus Tyson stunt attached to it to launch a new food beverage or drink beverage or whatever, like it feels like, could you ever really make it? So in many ways, I think our attention kind of is being hacked. And I think, so you're right that there is big bets. It's just harder to get attention. And so if you stick to the level of the stunty parts, then your credibility goes out the window, and gamers are one of the most, I don't want to say, particular sort of core groups of I hate to use the term consumers, but you know, out there. And I think that's the challenge is how do you speak with them? It's why when Balatro comes out of left field and you're just like, this just feels like heaven. I remember going on a flight, I call it a time machine. It's a time machine because I can just basically make 9 hours disappear on a flight. But you root for the little guys. You root for the unknown ones, right?
There's an authenticity that I think comes with that. You know, some of it's not earned per se, but it always feels like, you know, like I think it makes it a lot easier to root for, whether it's Balatro or like the Vampire Survivors of the world. Of just like, look at this look at this insane little thing, and it's it's way more fun than any of these $100 million, $200 million whatevers.
Side note: if you're into those types of games, Deep Rock Galactic Survival is awesome. I just love that game so much. So
I haven't played it. I haven't played it since it first hit early access. I'm sure there's like a bunch of new stuff in it that I haven't seen. But
I played it in early access. I maxed everything out, and then I did play it for 9 months, and then they reset everything and gave me back all my tokens. It was amazing. So I got to basically redline it again. But it's interesting. The innovative part is tough because it's still happening. It's happening almost like despite some of the larger trends. Like this industry, that's why I believe in this industry so deeply that we will persevere and we'll push through this stuff because innovation is still going to be made. It's that. I remember, I'll never forget doing that panel. I think you and I talked about this many, many years ago at GDC when John Blow's game first came out, Brave. And he was doing a panel. I was on this panel and I was at Capcom at the time because we were doing like Bionic Commando Rearmed and Street Fighter HD Remix, and John Blow was saying like, yeah, you know, the best thing you should do as an independent developer is just stay at home for 4 years in your basement and make your game. And I was like, hey, can we do a quick poll of the room? How many people have 4 years of rent saved up? Right. And one guy put up his hand, and John Blow was like, why are you being a jerk? Kind of looking at me. I'm like, no one can do that.
Like, who can do that? That's like when Nintendo got up at GDC, they had their keynote, and they're like, yeah, we just hang out and until we figure it out. We don't ship a game until we figure out how to actually make a good one. And developers just like look at each other going like, yeah, it must be great if you're fucking Nintendo. Like, what? Yeah.
Well, the other thing is, and I actually realized this from a lot of the studio vids that I was doing, is some of the greatest processes for game design, game creation came from studios that weren't project to project, work for hire pitching their next thing, that were back funded, right? They were basically what they call a cost center. What a cost center means in the business world means that you're just basically your whole entire cost to run your operations is written down every year. Yeah. So you don't have to be profitable within that group of people. A profit center means that you have to run a profit each year and you have to sort of report. So when a team is built as a cost center, then they can basically have 8 months at the start just to jam on stuff. And so a lot of learnings we had when I was at Iron Galaxy, speaking with the other studios, like, oh wow, it's such an amazing process. I'm like, oh right, if you don't have to worry about where the next paycheck's coming from, of course that's amazing. It's why their products are so good year and year again, right? But it's hard to just sit there and be like, how can you architect success nowadays when, I don't want to say the fickleness, but taste change and you're trying to capture not just one lightning in a bottle, but like 6 at a time. And it's super challenging.
Yeah, and you watch a lot of games that feel like they're chasing trends, or like there's this notion of like extraction shooters feel like that they, like even there are still a couple of them that are very popular out there, your Tarkovs and things like that, but like they don't feel like they've broken through in a mainstream way. Right. And so it feels like that there's still this like relatively small gold rush of like someone's going to be the person to crack the nut on extraction shooters or whatever, and it's been weird to see a bunch of those get announced and then delayed, and it just feels like by the time any of them ship that no one's gonna maybe even want that anymore. And the trend stuff like that's my impression of Concord.
You're thinking about the region Concord.
No. Always Concord, California is always on my mind, that. But like that is such a crazy situation. What do you make of that? A game, ships like that was a game that when they first showed it in the summertime time frame, like the reception to the trailers were not super positive. The reception to the beta was not super positive. Yeah. And then they shipped it and ended up pulling the plug on it however many days later. Right. And refunding everyone. It's like, I don't think it's necessarily like a harbinger or like, oh, this is the norm, but it does kind of illustrate that the stakes in this type of thing, especially for multiplayer games, are just crazy. This is like Rumbleverse is another situation where it's like like the stakes in this are crazy. That game, that's a great game, and it got pulled offline. Like what are you supposed to do?
I mean, keep swinging. Honestly, like it's interesting. I think the one thing that many people need to understand is, first of all, not all the numbers you read on the internet are real. About budgets and stuff like that. But more importantly, there's no bad actors trying to really like let's get them by do like everyone has their best intentions.
Right.
And a lot of times,
no one came out ahead on the Conquer thing. No one's like, we did it, you know. But
yeah,
like,
we whatever. Like,
yeah,
it's sometimes it's interesting because if you ask someone,
3mm
hey, what do you
ports
want?
on it,
Like I asked my daughter when she was there, what do you want for Christmas?
which
I was like, so, and then
I
you know, you give her
imagine is for
you know,
yeah.
external.
But sometimes in
gun
our
accessories?
industry, you need to show people something new to see if it catches. Right? You can do test. I remember passing on Minecraft when I was at Capcom. Right? I was like, yeah, I don't get it. It's janky, right? I'm this looks so goofy. And I was wrong. And sometimes I think companies want to be like, hey, let's try this out. You know, maybe they get focus feedback, maybe some positive, some negative, or mixed. Like, hey, sometimes if people have strong feelings about it in one way or another, let's sort of see what the market says.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get caught, you know, and you get burnt. And I also think our industry is overly tough on people that take risks, big companies that take risks. Let's be clear.
Sure.
So no one, I think, along the way ever had any intentions. You know, I think people on the team are passionate about what they're doing. They're working their butts off to make something cool and different. Didn't resonate, wasn't really fit. And so we can sit here and we can say that loud and we can be angry about the decisions and how possibly, but you know, there's been.
I think totally. I think I just look at it as like,
Yeah,
how did that game get that far? Sure.
made a lot of progress on this today.
And I don't know, like, you know, you obviously
think I'm gonna
PlayStation, so,
put this on hold.
But I look at it.
Work
like,
on it a little bit
there was
tomorrow.
some
May or may
amount of
not
regime
stream it.
change in the middle of that game.
But yeah,
Promotion cycle and what have you, but like that's so late in the game that the decisions are probably already all made. And I just
will
look at it like,
catch
again,
y'all
like it's one of those situations of like,
later.
You know, how did that, you know, in a world where they're